We now go to Dr. Nick Begich. Dr. Nick Begich serves as Executive Director of the Lay Institute of Technology, Inc., a Texas nonprofit corporation. He's also the publisher and co-author of Earth Pulse Press, Incorporated, an Alaskan-based organization. Dr. Begich is the eldest son of the late United States Congressman from Alaska, Nick Begich Sr., and political activist Peggy Begich. He is well-known in Alaska for his own political activities. He has twice been elected president of both the Alaska Federation of Teachers and the Anchorage Council of Education. He has been pursuing independent research in the sciences and politics for most of his adult life. Begich received his doctorate in traditional medicine from the Open International University of Complementary Medicines in 1994. He co-authored with Gene Manning the book Angels Don't Play This Harp, Advances in Tesla Technology. Begich also authored Earth Pulse 1 and 2 with the late James Roderick. He has published articles in Science, Politics, and Education, and is a well-known lecturer, having presented throughout the United States and in 19 countries, including to the European Parliament. He has been featured as a guest on thousands of radio broadcasts reporting his research activities, including new technologies, health and earth science-related issues. He has also appeared on dozens of television documentaries and other programs throughout the world, including BBC and CBC TV Telemundo. And I would add, he's one of the leading experts on patents and declassified information on mind control, weather manipulation, bioweapons, chemical weapons, surveillance that is admitted but not known, not generally known, so for all intents and purposes, secret, because people are not aware of it. So I want to talk to him on about a host of issues the next hour and 35, 40 minutes that we have him for. Really honored to be talking to him. But I did find the story today. It's up on Infowars.com from Reality Check, and did go and confirm that the big ISPs in Canada are going to go ahead and go to Internet 2 in the next few months. They're going to try it. And I wanted to get, because I know you've been on top of this, to talk about the multi-pronged attack on the Internet that is now happening. Time Warner's doing this in some towns in Texas, and I wanted to get your expert take on that as a technologist on what we're facing, and how you think we should counter it, Dr. Begich.
Well, the Internet itself has been, when it first started, everybody was sort of non-commercial. It was all about geeks and high technology, and eventually it became, big commercial enterprise. I mean, when you really think about it, from a globalist perspective, it's always been about markets and building patterns and incomes. And when you start to look at what they've amassed, the biggest issue with the Internet is personal privacy, which is still not adequately guarded in my view. When you think about all of the data banks surrounding our lives today, it used to be the doorway to your home was the threshold to your privacy, and today it's really a digital doorway. And so when you talk about the Internet, it's more than just the commercial aspects, and certainly making money on the Internet has been, in the way of tracking data has been one thing, but the data itself is valuable. When you can look at a person's profile, when you start to look at millions and millions of people's activity and then their political persuasions, sort of their background, you can really refine. Profiling becomes an art form of unbelievable predictability. And so then you start to look at manipulation of that data. And this is where targeted advertising comes into play on an unprecedented scale. Virtually being able to identify candidates, political issues, products that you're going to say yes to most likely, and then that you become the target of that advertising.
And it's tying the entire world population into an NSA snooping grid so they can build detailed psychological algorithms and truly know your heart of hearts. It's much worse than physically surveilling you. It surveils your most innermost secrets, and it's also done in the comfort of your own home with our evolutionary development for feeling like we have privacy in our cave, truly scanning. And I'm not getting into an evolution debate. I mean, our development as humans. Just absolutely amazing. But I first, we're about to break, want to get your take on their attempts to come in and regulate it and shut it down now. Yeah, absolutely. When you look at the military side of it, it's already been moved aside. You got to go. They have their own sort of search networks, kind of excluded from the what most people deal with. The research sites are getting pressed down as well, where there's less and less access. And that whole constraining of data is really working against modern democracy in this century. Okay, Doc, I want to skip the break for PrisonPlanet.tv viewers and people listening on the internet. For everybody else, if you're listening on another stream, you'll miss the next 4 minutes. If not, go to Infowars.com and click on the Listen Live button. You'll be able to hear us talk. I'm going to skip some of these breaks so that we don't waste time with Dr. Nick Begich. We'll continue discussing everything with him right now.
Jim.
Okay, Doc, we're going to come back in 4 minutes to the full audience, but let's not waste time. Keep going with how you're chronicling what's happening to the web.
Well, when you start to look at all of it together, and this is what we've tried to say in all of our writing and all of our work the last 15 years, is when you start to, you look at any one of these little snapshots within the sort of public bubble of information, and the way the military and planners, NSA, Homeland Insecurity, whoever it is, look at this is it's incremental. It's like one slice at a time. Something hits the news, stays in the news for about 30 seconds, and it's gone. And when you start to connect it, when you start to look at the aspects of the Internet that truly created an environment where people could communicate at an unprecedented level, exchange ideas without the filtering of a controlled media. And that is a dangerous thing from a globalist perspective, ultimately. When you start to look at then what was being gained by it. I mean, think about Google recently. I mean, the Chinese get to pick their brains to find out who to go beat up in the street or whatever thug approach to government they want to operate over there. The cooperation of telecommunications companies for surveillance of American populations, and then retroactively, sort of saying, oh, we're sorry, but no one's going to prosecute you, even though you violate the civil liberties of everyone in the country. When you look at the shutdown of the Freedom of Information Act under this administration at a level that has been the slowest amount of information coming forward to the public that deserves to be public, much of it 40, 50 years old, for goodness sakes. And, that's been constrained. The classifying of information at unprecedented levels.
You make me think there, before I forget to ask you about this, to elaborate there. People always ask me, well, why did they declassify things 50, 60 years ago that was incriminating, or 20 years ago? Well, back then we were more of a free society. We hadn't been fully taken over under the National Security Act of 47. There was a process of usurpation going on. But now they do have to ban basically declassifying anything, because now it can actually be used. 20, 30 years ago, the corporate press was so narrowly controlled and regulated and had so many spooks in it that so what if you got a declassified document that Gulf of Tonkin was staged? You might labor and get a self-published book made that maybe 1,000 people will read, but then so now this knowledge can damage them.
Oh, yeah. Because people like you, people like me, a lot of others all over the country, and a lot of individual committees of one listening to this broadcast, pick up information and pass it on. And that, the true democracy in the 21st century is about information. It's about being able to make sure that the integrity of information is good, number one. Because if we digitize everything, we put it all on the net, history kind of becomes flexible. I like paper. I'm a paper fiend when it comes to saving data, because in the early days of the Internet, it was very unreliable. You'd have to go pull the documents, and stuff was quoted out of context and so on, and you'd really have to look the paper up. When we published our first book, the book Angels Don't Play This Harp, it was about library work more than the Internet. Our last books.
Oh, and my first films, back when I was first doing radio in 95, 96, well, TV 95, radio
right.
96, I remember going to the library every week.
Right. That's where we got our good information. The Internet might have gave us a lead or a tip, but you couldn't trust it. Well, then it changed and became, more mainstream and more trustworthy. But at the same time, recognize data goes up, data goes down. A lot of things all of a sudden are gone. It's things you were referencing to people, they're gone. And this is why we've always printed out the paper. And when you do that and you retain it, and then you start to string it together in a reasonable, coherent form. Then
Stay there. We're going to come back to the full audience right now. Continue.
Jones on the GCN Radio Network.
Dr. Begich is giving us a general lecture on some of the history of the Internet, how it gave rise to a huge researching community, how now the government doesn't want to declassify anything because that information can now be shared and actually damage them, whether they could declassify 20 years ago evidence about staging Gulf of Tonkin, nobody could share it. you had a few little research communities that knew about it, and they could never get on television or the radio. Now that's all been shattered. They have to shut down the web. Dr. Begich, I don't see any choice. They've tried to put out a bunch of background chatter. The Pentagon's admitted for the last 5 years they're engaging in propaganda in the U.S. and worldwide, quote, countering disinfo on the web. Now Wikipedia engages in all sorts of lies and disinfo. And is now very disreputable. I mean, a few years ago they were a little bit better, but still questionable. So we're just seeing a lot of dirty tricks. But now they're saying, look, we're just going to not let you have free access to the web, and we're going to block out millions of websites and only let you go to a few thousand corporate sites, which sounds like a lot of choices, but really isn't. Dr. Begich?
This is exactly the wrong direction. And, you know, when you look at telecommunications law and sort of how it's evolved, it's really, you know, once again, you can't look at any of these things in a vacuum. And I know you and your audience don't do that. You look at the whole picture and you start to see a very finely woven carpet that works against